Recently released disclosures show that Hollywood and major publishing companies, along with the music industry, are standing in the way of lifting the patent or the copyright for the coronavirus vaccines. In fact, they have sent letters to the White House urging them to avoid doing so. Why? Why would Hollywood be so concerned about lifting the patent for a coronavirus vaccine or the coronavirus vaccines when poor countries desperately need to be able to manufacture their own? Well, it turns out that they're concerned that this could be a slippery slope that could lead to piracy, hurting their profits. So as Lee Fong over at The Intercept writes, the Motion Picture Association, which represents major movie and television studios, deployed 5 lobbyists to influence Congress and the White House over the waiver. The Association of American Publishers, as well as Universal Music, have similarly revealed that they are actively lobbying against it. So the industry sources say that the lobbyists are actually concerned that the waiver will be too broad in scope and could open the door for increased piracy. But the copyright industry push relates to a provision of the proposal that would waive copyright enforcement for the prevention, containment, and treatment of COVID-19. This doesn't apply to the Hollywood industry at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. They claim that the wording in the request indicates that it could affect them, but that's not true. So, for instance, a spokesperson for the Recording Industry Association of America told The Intercept, as originally drafted, the proposal waiver would have extended to wholly unrelated areas that have nothing to do with the global fight against COVID, like copyright in creative works. But when they were asked for the language that they're speaking of, they didn't respond. They didn't provide any evidence for what they're claiming there. And the draft text for the waiver notes that the waiver in paragraph 1 shall not apply to the protection of performers, producers, and phonograms, meaning sound recordings, and broadcasting organizations under Article 14 of the TRIPS agreement. So what's the problem?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Well, so I'll tell you why they're doing this and how it's inevitable, but we have to be super cognizant of it, but we're not. Okay, so why are they doing this? Because there's certain employees within that lobby that know that if you loosen copyright restrictions, it might eventually affect them. Okay, even if it doesn't affect them in this case, they're worried about precedent. Now, is that a high probability? No, it's not a high probability. But if you're a lobbyist for this industry, you don't care about high probability or not. You're gonna fight any attempt to expand waivers on copyrights, okay? That is core to their business model. So us wishing that they wouldn't do it or hoping they wouldn't do it is naive. They're definitely going to do it. And us thinking, well, that seems really inhumane. I mean, you're worried about this tiny chance that it's gonna affect you down the road. Meanwhile, people are dying in India, and you say, don't do a waiver on a drug that I got nothing to do with, because one day you might do a waiver on movies down the road. God, that's so callous. Yeah, that's called capitalism.
Yes, exactly. Okay. When profits go over the lives of people.
But in our system, look, you don't have to design capitalism that way, but we did. In our system in America, we told corporations, public corporations, you must maximize profit. If you don't maximize profit, you will be fired, okay? That's just a stone cold fact. So they're not gonna care about the people of India. They're just never going to care. That's not how it works, so stop being naive. Now, does that mean, okay, well, that's it, we give up and say, no, if you're aware of that phenomenon at least, then your politicians, if they actually were functioning in a democracy, would then fight on your behalf. Democracy would check capitalism and say, okay, I hear why you're doing that, movie companies, but our answer is no, not close. But we don't do that here in America, why? Because we legalize bribery. So those guys give tons of money to politicians. So now when they give millions of dollars to politicians, what do you think politicians are gonna do? How much did the people of India, the people dying in Calcutta and Mumbai, give to senators here in America? Zero. And theoretically, the government of India cannot give money to our politicians, but corporations can, movie companies can, drug companies can, they're number one in giving. So when all of these companies unite and they bribe all of our politicians, then our entire laws are skewed, and then we become inhumane. America then, through our politicians, says, no, we don't want to help dying people all across the world. Why? Because Warner Brothers and Pfizer, or name any movie companies or drug companies, paid me off. And they say that it might affect their profits by a couple of dollars. So that's it. All the people that are suffering in Brazil, Russia, Corona in India, you name it, go die. Because America set up the wrong system.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting because I used to think the same way, that capitalism can be reformed. I mean, the United States managed to do that in the New Deal era, right? I mean, that's what Roosevelt managed to do, but what happened after that? Business interests will always find a way to beat back any type of regulation or any type of check on their power or profit-making abilities, which is why this problem could have easily been solved by decommodifying the healthcare industry, like pharmaceutical drugs, right? Get like the industries that we rely on to live, right? Whether it's housing or the healthcare companies and all of that, there should be no profit motive. Prisons, no profit motive. Once you introduce a profit motive to those industries and you commodify it, well then yeah, you're gonna get screwed. And regardless of how many regulations you pass, I mean, there are cases where corporations just literally don't follow regulations and they get away with it. It's called Wall Street.
Yeah, well, it's actually called almost all the industries because, again, the bribery, et cetera. So look, I don't want to get into a long debate about capitalism, but I'm not convinced that there is really a functioning second model. But the definition of capitalism is much broader than people realize. Everybody thinks, oh, it has to be the American version, the extreme version where there are no rules and corporations completely own the government and they could do any cruelty that they want. So Anna's right, things that affect our lives like cops, fire departments, and yes, health insurance must be public. And you could do that in a capitalist system, all of Europe does, okay? But I don't think the drug companies should be. But so how would you solve this problem if we didn't have legalized bribery in this country? It's actually very simple. When we gave $18 billion in subsidies to the drug companies to develop those vaccines, we attach a condition like any investor would. You say, hey, if I'm giving you $18 billion, here's what I want back. And one of the things you would have said, because it's the most obvious thing to think through, is what is it gonna cost the American people? And then once we're done with the American people, if you're just looking at it from a selfish American perspective, how are we gonna make generic drugs from these vaccines and how much is it gonna cost the rest of the world? You would have thought that through, you would have negotiated ahead of time, and then we wouldn't get into this mess now where we go, oh golly gee, nobody could have thought that one day we might wanna use the vaccine in India. Of course we were gonna use it in India, of course we were. Why did they not pre-negotiate that as the government? Because they're bought by the drug companies. This is not, we couldn't see it coming that the rest of the world would want a vaccine. They purposely didn't negotiate it so they can now turn around and say, well, there was nothing we could do. They had to charge super high rates or let people die. There was nothing we could do. No, it's a lie, it's a scam. They knew there was something they could do and they chose not to do it because they're bought and paid for by largely the drug companies in this case, but even things like the movie companies. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.